So I straight up lost my phone, so this is going to be interesting to film. I will be looking up. I'm not looking up into the sky or something. I'm gonna have to look up at my list. So let's just get right into my April wrap up. I started the month with A Strong West Wind by Gail Caldwell. I mentioned it in my last wrap up, I think. It is a book recommended to me by Steve Donahue because he did a video about Lone Star Reads, like must reads books about Texas. And this is a memoir and it is fantastic. I don't know what kind of books Gail Caldwell normally writes. Doesn't matter. Her writing is immaculate in this thing. It is so cool to hear about her life growing up in West Texas. Is it West Texas if it's in the Panhandle or near the Panhandle, like outside of Amarillo? I don't know. I'm technically in North Texas, despite the fact that there's 2 states worth of Texas northwest of me. So who knows? The geography in Texas is as weird as it is diverse. I think anyone would enjoy this book. This isn't one of those things where I'm like, only 5 of you would care. I didn't know who Gail Caldwell was when I started the book. I just knew that she grew up in Texas, as it says on the book, and it was great. I think anyone would have a good time with it. Let's move on. I didn't read as many books as I normally do this month, by the way. I only read 7. This was a rough month. I read a lot of short fiction. I'm thinking I need to start making a short fiction wrap up or maybe doing a themed short fiction video every couple of weeks. We'll see. The problem being it's going to be, hey, these are the 5 John D. MacDonald short stories I read in the last week kind of thing. We don't need that. I'm actually taking a break right now. We'll talk about that in the what I plan on reading for the month of May. So after that, I read The Drowning Pool, which is Lou Archer Book 2 by Ross MacDonald. It's good. I don't think it's as good as the first one. The first one just like oozed LA noir vibes, and this reads almost exactly like another crime fiction novel from that time. I know you can't venture too far out of the tropes, especially in your second book ever, but like, how many times do we have to read the same story of detective has to deal with a weird ass rich family where weird things happen? And I don't know, maybe that's just the laid in stone trope of crime fiction, because as I'm saying that, I'm thinking about Knives Out and stuff like that, and it's like the same thing. I might just have to get over that. I'm still slowly trudging through Zelazny's bibliography. I hate that I have to use the word trudging, because I read Today We Choose Faces, and it's like, I don't know, I don't really care is like the problem with it. It is about a like mafia hitman who dies in like 1977 or something like that, and he is frozen and then revived hundreds of years later because what's left of this mafia, because they've gone legit-ish, he is hired to kill someone, and he goes to the planet where the dude is and kills them, and then I guess gets trapped on the planet or something. I don't know. He makes a bunch of weird clones of himself and builds this society that may or may not travel through interdimensional portals. It's too vague. I know Zelazny likes to leave stuff to the reader, but most of the time the story wasn't compelling, and it was too vague. I will say the premise is interesting because it's first person narration, but the narrator's slightly different throughout the story, because every time the POV character dies, you are head jumped into another one of the clones and their POV, and then you solidify on a single one later on. At one point you're in the mind of the original. Sounds awesome. Maybe it's just me. The book just wasn't executed as well as I think it should have been. I think it was too short. There's a lot of stilted stuff. The book's only 175 pages. I know I say I like short books, but they have to be done well. There's not as much margin for error in a short book. It's kind of like the thing Lawrence Block talks about, like short fiction is harder than writing a novel because you have a lot less time to develop a story in a short piece of short fiction, so you have to do it really well, while a novel, because it's bigger, leaves a little more room for mistakes. But when your book feels truncated, I think that it suffers quite a bit. So yeah, I've been missing on my Zelazny reads lately. Next up on my Zelazny reading is Deus Irae, which is co-authored by Philip K. Dick and is a post-apocalyptic novel, which, that's ticking all the boxes for me. Hopefully it's good. I've been wanting to read more nonfiction, as you can tell by A Strong West Wind, and after that I started reading Writing to Learn by William Zinsser. The overly long title for the book is Writing to Learn How to Write and Think Clearly About Any Subject at All. William Zinsser is an amazing writer. He wrote the book on writing. His writing is clean and efficient and entertaining, and I love everything about it. But this book is just weird. I gave it a decent rating, but the problem with it is he's not so much showing you how to write to learn as he is showing you how much he learned about these random topics from writing. Is it some weird meta-narrative choice that I'm not understanding or didn't want or what? I don't know. I just find it strange that I'm reading about him learning things instead of reading about him teaching you how to learn to write about learning things, which he kind of does, but there's no gritty details. It's just mostly about him, which is fine, but that's not really what I went into the book wanting, and that's not what overly long nonfiction title was selling me. It's a good book. His writing is great. The story is entertaining. This guy was writing in the way that like Malcolm Gladwell and stuff writes nowadays. You know, when was this? 1988. So it's that style of nonfiction. If you've read a Malcolm Gladwell book where you're like, oh, wow, all these really fascinating topics and we're talking about these problems and then there's no solutions given by the author. So that's kind of what this was. It's like, wow, this is a fascinating topic about writing how to learn or learning how to write in order to learn any subject or at least, you know, get a decent grasp on it. But there's no instruction on how to do that. Let's move on. I was feeling burnout. I didn't read a lot this month and I don't know why. Nothing was interesting me. So I went back to the rereading well. I read The Deep Blue Goodbye for the third time in less than 2 years. The book is perfect. I love everything about it. Getting back into the Travis McGee series, even though I just finished the series last month, doesn't matter, made my heart happy. When I said in a previous video I could read these every year for the rest of my life, what I should have said was I could read one of them a week, every week for the rest of my life. Now, I'm not gonna do that. I might do one a month. We'll see how I'm feeling. I already have the rest of them queued up on my phone. It was funny. My wife and I were talking about it, and I said I couldn't figure out what to read. And she's like, just start the McGee series again. She was joking, kind of. And I said, nah, I'm not going to do that. And I looked and saw that it's like 4 gigabytes for all 21 books. I had plenty of space on my phone. So I said, you know, I am going to do that. And I'm not even going to delete them when I finish them now. They're just going to live on my phone forever. I'm going to dip back into that series anytime I'm feeling burnt out because wow, is it good. My favorite series of all time. After that, thanks to the advice of Steve, I read my favorite book on the history of Texas ever. I haven't read as much on the history of Texas as I should, but I'd already read like half the books that Steve recommended in that video and loved all of them. And so then I read the Gail Caldwell one. It was amazing. So I read Big Wonderful Thing, A History of Texas by Stephen Harrigan. This is the book for the history of Texas, which I'm saying that there's another history of Texas that Steve recommended. I'll be reading that in the next month or two as well. This book is great. It does such a good job of diving into the history of Texas and not just the Anglo-centric side, which has always been irritating. I really enjoyed Impresario of Texas, the Stephen F. Austin biography by a local author to me I can't remember the name of. And the cool thing about it is he did the same thing. He's not glorifying the Anglo expansion into Texas. He's just telling it like it is and giving you the details about what happened. And this does the same thing. And what I really enjoyed is how deep of a dive he goes into when it comes to the people not talked about enough when we're talking about Texas history, because when you mention Texas history, even to people who took it in 7th grade that grew up in Texas for like, oh, the Alamo and San Jacinto and Stephen F. Austin. And it's like, yeah, you mean that 10 years when Texas was a republic and then a state. And then they're like, oh, and then, you know, the Civil War and then, I don't know, Lyndon Johnson or something. That's all people remember. It does a really good job of covering the original native tribes in Texas, what Texas was like in prehistoric days. And it really starts from the beginning and it's so cool. And he draws such an amazing picture in your mind. As of right now, this is my nonfiction book of the year because it's just so good. And back to what I was saying, he talks about the Tejanos and the Spanish in Texas. He does a really good job of talking about the Spanish explorers in the early history of Texas, things I did not know about at all. And it's great because it's almost like a little side quest. Really good. Side note, here in Texas, so there's this whole thing about Don Quixote where it's not spelled with an X, it's spelled with a J in modern Spanish spelling. And I was thinking about it a lot as I was listening to this book, because we have counties here in Texas that are still using the original Spanish spelling, like Bexar County is Bexar. I just find it really fascinating that there are still these pieces of Spanish Texas around, and it with the way things are pronounced and so on and so forth. It's just really cool that we have those pieces. A lot of them got torn down thanks to the Anglo expansion into Texas. And Yeah, one of the things about this book is some of it just felt like a kick to the stomach because you're hearing about these events that happened. He does a really good job of covering racial and socioeconomic issues throughout the history of Texas. And sometimes it like hurt to listen to it. I did it on audio, but it's still so good. Not sure where that little side tangent was going. I just really enjoyed the book. I think if anyone wants a book on the history of Texas, this is the one to read. If you are a Texan, you should have already read this. I should have already read this. Why is a 27-year-old man from Boston telling me that I should be reading this? I should have already done it. Beyond that, book real good. Before I talk about my final book I read this month, yes, I only read 7, and some of them were like baby books I finished in a single day. I don't know what's going on with my interest in fantasy, but it's at like a all-time low. Even though I just finished Legend, which blew my mind. I adore that book, but I'm just not feeling fantasy. Every time I try to pick up a fantasy book, I'm like, no. It's almost all books at this point. I've been doing crime fiction. I don't know what my deal is. Hopefully it'll go away. I think I've made videos about this before where I struggled. I think I'm onto something. We're going to go on a little bit of a tangent because, what is one of my videos without a ADHD meandering story? I went to an estate sale. Now, the estate sale looked promising, kind of. It was a nerd estate sale, and last time I went to a nerd estate sale, I had an amazing haul. I had one of the worst pieces of fiction I've ever read in that haul, but also some amazing tabletop RPG stuff. I was hoping this one would be the same, but they had a lot of Warhammer stuff, and I'm like, ooh, I don't know. This is going to be really busy, and it was very busy because they had Warhammer stuff from the original, like, pewter models in 1984-ish. They had a first edition of Rogue Trader, which is Warhammer 40k first edition. They had second edition rule books. They had all the miniatures this guy had been collecting for the entire history of Games Workshop, all the way up until like stuff that came out 6 months ago. This is an estate sale that wasn't depressing because usually I go there and I'm like, wow, this stuff's really cool. And then I think about the person being dead and I'm like, this is kind of sad. Well, this person was still alive. They were just downsizing and they were having an estate sale company sell it. Well, this estate sale company was smoking crack. The prices were insane. I should have known because I think I've been to some of their estate sales before. And I got there, I had to wait in line to go into the nerd room that had all the Warhammer stuff. I wasn't even there for the Warhammer stuff. There was Star Frontiers by TSR, which is one of the first science fiction tabletop RPGs. And then there was Traveler, the original box set from like 1977. And it had 2 extra books in it. And I didn't know that at the time. I just saw it in the stuff. And then I saw there was like some D&D 4th edition stuff. It was the Dungeon Master's kit, which I already own. But I was going to use that as like a litmus test for not even a litmus test. I was going to use that as a sanity check for the prices at this place, because if it was insane, like literally the least popular edition of D&D, if the price on it was nuts, then I wasn't going to really bother looking too much. I ended up spending like an hour digging around there, but yeah, they wanted $90 for the Star Frontier box, which seems high because it wasn't like immaculate. Like maybe everything was there, but the box wasn't in pristine shape. And then the Traveler, little Traveler box set, wanted $180. And now like some guy was complaining behind me. He's like, their prices are insane. And I was like, whatever, this guy's just salty. I've seen him at other estate sales. He grabs up all the vintage board games and I don't know, probably sells them on eBay, I think. So he's wanting like a big profit margin. Like if he's buying it for $25, he's selling it for $50, that kind of thing. And so yeah, he's going to cry about prices that are not half of what he wants to sell it for. But I'm in the middle. Same thing with used books. Like I have an advantage when I'm shopping for used books because booksellers are trying to get a very big margin and I'm trying to get about half that margin. Like I don't want to pay 100% of what a bookseller is offering a book at, but I'm also not worried about getting it for half that price. I'll meet it in the middle. So I have picked up a lot of really cool books at estate sales because they're just high enough that book resellers don't want them, but it's low enough that it's a good deal for me. Well, this estate sale was like double what it would sell for anywhere else. And like the guy was complaining once we got into the room and I started looking at the prices and I'm like, yeah, these are not reasonable prices at all. And I told him that. He's like, yeah, it's crazy. And he was pointing at stuff. He's like, this maybe. If I get this for $30, I might be able to sell it for $50, which isn't quite what I want to do. And that's only if everything's there. And he opened it and it wasn't punched. By the way, they had a sign that said, don't open the board games. And it's like, what? I'm not going to buy a 50-year-old board game where I can't make sure that it has at least most of the pieces. That's crazy. Some of them they had taped shut. And it's like, I have to verify the contents. There could be anything in there. At the last estate sale I went to, I almost bought the Starfleet, like battles, the OG Star Trek tabletop RPG where you're commanding a ship. And it was more of a war game than a tabletop RPG, actually. I almost bought it and then I opened it and it was just copy paper and random notes. It didn't even have the rules in it. I'd have been screwed. I was going to pay $40 $40 for that stupid thing. Back to this current estate sale, I started pointing stuff out to him, and he's like, see, we're not looking for the same things, but they're kind of adjacent, and even you realize the prices are nuts. And I was like, yeah, the Dungeon Masters kit, they wanted $70 for it. For the 4th edition Dungeon Masters kit, I paid like $30 for mine. And then I looked it up on eBay because they said they were going based on what has sold. None of them have sold for $70. One of them sold for $60 with $20 shipping. You don't count the shipping. You don't count half the shipping. What were they doing? None of them sold for more than $50 in the last 6 months. So I don't know why they had it listed at $70. It's just crazy. And then Saturday was supposed to be 25% off, and usually Sundays are 50% off. But every time someone asked them, is it going to be 50% off on Sunday? They wouldn't answer. They wouldn't say yes or no. They'd be like, well, tomorrow's 25% off. And it's like, yeah, that's not what I asked. So even they knew the prices were nuts. This was a very long rant about estate sales being too expensive for me to say. I started getting into Traveler, not so much running the game. I'm reading This is Free Trader Beowulf, which is a history of the game. It's fascinating. And I kept thinking, man, science fiction just feels right at the moment. So I read Terms of Enlistment by Marco Klose. Or Klus. He's German. I'm mispronouncing his name. He served in the West German military back in 1989, and Terms of Enlistment is his military science fiction series. It is so good. I love it. The only bad thing I've seen about that book, because I was looking at like little reviews as I got about halfway through it, the only complaint I saw was someone was like, oh man, I was in the German army, and the first third of this book is just so boring because it's all boot camp, and it is exactly like boot camp was for me when I served in the German military. And someone commented, and they're like, bro, he literally served in the same military. That's why it seems so real. So the only complaint I've seen is that the boot camp felt too real. So that's like a feature, not a bug. The book is about a near future Earth where we have interstellar travel. We have started to populate planets up to like 40-ish light years away. So we haven't gone, as he says in the book, much beyond our front yard. It's just really good. He has so much to say, but without telling you. It is a very show, not tell book. You start to suspect that the system is set up in a way to force people into the military or into colonies. You're following the main character. His name is, I think, Andrew Grayson. I'm just going to call him Grayson because that's what he goes by in the book. You follow Grayson as he escapes abject poverty in the Boston metro area in this like dystopian, they're like dystopian projects where impoverished people live, where they have like a universal basic income, but it's essentially just like food credits, and you just get synthesized protein and rice or whatever, and you live in these apartments that are given to you by the state, and everything's like stainless steel and bolted down so that it doesn't get stolen or sold, and it's just dehumanizing. And he wants to get out, and he manages to pass the test to join the military, because your options are win the lottery for a colony ship or join the military. And the military has a super high dropout rate, and this poverty he leaves like is soul crushing. And he gets into the military and he's like, I'll do anything to not go back to where I came from. And it feels like throughout the book these little hints are dropped about, it seems purposeful that they are left the way they are so that people are desperate. There are some very interesting interactions with other parts of the Commonwealth, which is like all of North America, I think, where he is dealing with people that grew up the same way he did. There's the terrestrial army, which deals with insurrections and other militaries on Earth for like the Sino-Russian alliance, which they call the SRA. And then there's like the Marines that are on ships in space, and then the Navy, which are the spaceships. And so, you know, they're doing their own thing. But the real shit happens on the ground with the terrestrial army. It's very good. I don't want to go into the last third of the book because it sets up the rest of the series, and it is a very interesting and very good. I had such a great time with it. I don't know if the book is as good as I feel about it, but I really enjoyed it, and it just rekindled my love of science fiction, especially military science fiction. So I might be doing a deep dive on that. I was talking to my wife and I said, you know, this is cool that I'm getting into military science fiction again, because it feels like it's been a long time. And then I remember I read 17 Vorkosigan novels in a row. Your boy Miles is in the military that whole time. So maybe I just love military science fiction and was too dumb to realize it. I love stuff like Old Man's War, The Forever War, Starship Troopers, so I should have known that this was going to click. I've had the book for like 5 years sitting on my bookshelf. I'm glad I finally read it. Didn't realize there's like 9 or 10 books in the series. I thought it was like at most 5 books. So I got a lot of reading ahead of me. I'm really looking forward to it. Now let's get into what I'm going to be reading in May. I will be reading another book in the Frontlines series, the first one being Terms of Enlistment, and then I will read more of This is Free Trader Beowulf, written by Shannon Appelkline. It is a history of the Traveler tabletop RPG in typical Shannon Appelkline fashion. It is nitty gritty in the best way possible. He is such a good storyteller when it comes to pulling you through this history of a topic. And plus there's tons of pictures and graphics from the era, starting with like, the early 1970s. I'm just in love with it. I'm having such a good time. I read, somewhere between 1 and 20 pages before bed every night. It's a very cool book, and it's a landscape book. So it's like a wide boy with like 2 full-size page columns, and sometimes it's, shrunk down. So we got a lot of art and stuff. Great book. I'll post some pictures of it as I'm yapping about it. Beyond that, I think I want to read a Dortmunder book. I might give some more fantasy a try. I have Deus Irae by Roger Zelazny and Philip K. Dick on my phone, ready to go in audio. Maybe I'll do that. I straight up lost my phone, as I said at the beginning of the video, so I don't know what else I have queued up on there. I'm definitely going to do Nightmare and Ping because I can't get enough Travis McGee. I will be reading more short fiction. I've been reading a lot of Theodore Sturgeon and John D. MacDonald short fiction. I also read some D.L. Champion short fiction. D.L. Champion wrote one of the most unhinged characters I've ever read. He is a former detective who had his legs amputated because it got lit up by a machine gun when he was charging into a house, in the stupidest tactics I've ever seen in even a pulp. He's constantly emotionally abusing the guy he deems responsible for him getting his legs shot off. He works for the police. I think I've talked about him already, but he's Inspector Allhoff. The man is unhinged. Maybe I'll read more of that. I don't know, because it's like mean-spirited, which isn't really the vibe I'm going for at the moment. Books are supposed to make me feel better, or at least let me escape from feeling bad. It's taken everything in my power not to reread more Glenn Cook. I want to read Sweet Silver Blues again, the first Garrett P.I. novel. I'm trying to hold off. I'm also trying to hold off on reading any Westerns this month, because the next month being June on the Range. What is the theme for May for BookTube? Is it like monsters or something? I don't know. Someone let me know in the comments. Maybe I'll read something that fits that theme. I'm really like barely treading water when it comes to interest in books at the moment. I don't know why. Maybe by the end of the month, I will have just torn through some books, because that happened last year or the year before, where I started to stall out, and then I had like my best month ever. So here's hoping that's what happened. If you've got any suggestions, let me know in the comments. What did you read in April? I would love to hear about it. Thanks for watching. And with that, I'll see you next time.